Hey guys. So I know it's late. I was busy today, just doing lots of little bitty things. But I actually did my first Medivivor volunteer training today, which I was pretty excited about. But today in history, a year ago, was my Chemo Teach at the Rocky Mountain Cancer Center, which I actually was switching from. And at the time, I knew I was actually switching from it. They scheduled my Chemo Teach the day after my port was put in. So I could barely function at this point. My arm, like I said, was barely able to move. It was so bruised and in pain. And the port was still sore. Like I just had surgery where I was under the day before. Um, I was trying to get my records during this time, and my parents had helped me out by trying to call and get my records, and they didn't want to give me my records. So they had asked that my parents not accompany me to the Chemo Teach because they had offended some woman that was the record keeper there, which was really bizarre. They had told me, however, that my dog could come with me to chemo, which was also weird. My dog is like a registered service dog. It's like my dog can come, but my parents can't. Luckily, my good friend Shari was able to come with me to the Chemo Teach, and it was a wonderful thing, and one of the first, one of many times that I've had really good friends that have stepped in and helped me out throughout this whole time. And like I said, I actually don't. I'm looking through my notes at Chemo Teach, and I'm like, I have 5 notes because Shari came in with her laptop and took these very detailed notes. And I'm sure if Shari was doing this video, she would be able to tell you everything that happened in Chemo Teach. I can probably tell you very little about what I remember from Chemo Teach, especially that one. I can tell you more about what happened at the university's Chemo Teach. So at the time that we were at this Chemo Teach, I actually already knew that I was probably going to switch to the university. So once I found out that I was stage 4, there were many reasons why I knew I wanted to switch to a university, and I think it's important to talk about those probably more so than the Chemo Teach. Um, Number one reason being that when you're at a smaller center like a Rocky Mountain Cancer Center or a Cancer Center of America or any of these smaller centers, it's okay when you're like a 1A or a 2B or anything like that. But once you think that you might need a clinical trial, even if you're like a triple negative 1A, these centers often aren't able to do these clinical trials. And I will say that, now that we're able to go online and self select to sign up for clinical trials ourselves, which is like a newer thing. I actually didn't even realize that you couldn't do that until 2008, and that we're in a really advantageous situation now where as cancer patients we can self select to do that. I didn't realize that you used to have to be put up for them by your doctors, and now we can self select to do that on many different sites. But anyways, that being said, you are in a better situation, especially when you're stage 4, to be at a university or at a bigger hospital that is already running clinical trials, or the doctors, like my current oncologist, Dr. Borges. She is actually one of the authors on one of the trials that is actually specific to my HER2 cancer right now. So being at a specific university that deals with my type of cancer and has these clinical trials is really um, an important thing for a cancer patient. And so immediately knowing that I was stage 4, and being a doctor's child, knowing these types of things, I guess I was in a situation in a place where I knew this ahead of time. I'm glad that, that I am a doctor's child. I hope that other patients are watching this or reading about things and know to take those steps, um, because I think it can be the difference between life and death. When you go through one or two different treatments that are already approved by the FDA. Once you get to those trials, it can take a while to get into a trial if you're not in the right university setting. So I already knew that I wanted to switch. I was already talking. My aunt, was knew one of the doctors, or knew of one of the doctors at the university, and the University of Colorado is ranked in the top 40 in the US, and it's the number one in Colorado. So I already knew that I needed to switch there. I already knew they were running the trials that I needed. And so I was already in talks to like get over there. So by the time I did the clinical, by the time I was doing this Chemo Teach, it was more just to keep things running over there, so that I would be ready to make the switch when I needed to make the switch. And I wasn't aware that I was going to have to redo the Chemo Teach, honestly. The most important things I think I learned at that Chemo Teach were that running a fever when you have chemo, um, after you have chemo, like 100.7 is like a detrimental fever after chemo. And it requires you to like immediately seek, um, well, to call immediately to a fellow or to your oncologist. Depends on where you are. At the Rocky Mountain Cancer Center, they automatically give you like an antibiotic, which is kind of strange. And it's supposed to be like a coverall for everything, which I thought was a little weird. At the university, they'll have you immediately come in or go to the ER because it could be, different. It could be something different, but because chemo weakens your immune system, so it like just basically knocks out everything, the good and the bad. Um, cells, white cells and red cells and white, it knocks out all your cells basically. You could go into sepsis pretty easily, septic shock. So they running even like an infant, basically an infant level, like the first three months of an infant's life, when they're running these teeny tiny little fevers, you have to like immediately call your pediatrician. It's basically the same thing with with you when you go through chemo. And so you're running even the slightest fever, you have to call immediately, and basically go make sure that you're not going into septic shock. So that was like one of the most important takeaways. Something else that was really important that I learned was that there's with one of the drugs that I was on, Taxotere, I was kind of like, I'm not that vain. I'm just gonna, go through it and not worry about my hair. The ice cap that they have is like really painful, and like on top of, I have really bad migraines. I've had them since I was 6 years old, and it seemed like an unnecessary reason to like add another layer of like getting a migraine. But Taxotere actually has all these crazy lawsuits against it right now because the makers of Taxotere didn't disclose that it can cause permanent hair loss. And so there's like an unknown number of patients at this point that are not having their hair grow back at all in certain areas or at all. And so it was recommended that you do the ice cap, because if you don't, you could literally not have your hair grow back at all. And since I was only 40, and at the time thought I was oligometastatic and had a better chance of survival, I did make the decision to do the ice cap. And that being said, it did actually help me throughout chemo to keep my hair, which was good for my daughter, to not see me super sick when I wasn't, in bed. Um, but afterwards, I lost pretty much all but about 10% of my hair. After the Chemo Teach, I decided to be like superhero mom, which was crazy because again, my arm was completely bruised, and I took my family, and I do recommend this for anybody that has a family, especially with young kids or without a family, before you go through chemo. And I called JCPenney up, JCPenney Portraits. I don't know if they'll still be around after all of this, but and I took the last slot of the day, brought the dog because the dog's allowed the last slot of the day. And we went down and we did family portraits. And I hid my port as best I could, and did my arm as best I could. And we did some family portraits. And then we also did some silly ones because I knew I was going to miss, most likely going to miss Halloween. And Margot had this really fun unicorn costume, and the baby had a unicorn costume, and the dog had a unicorn costume. And then I had some unicorn ears, and we did some unicorn pictures of us together. And that became kind of my chemo motto, was that like, do you believe in magic? And I had a really good friend here, Lauren, who actually, my first chemo, she had a lot of our friends, local friends, send me pictures of everybody. All of our friends sent pictures when I was in my chemo, of all of their families wearing unicorn horns and wishing me like good luck. And it really meant so much to me. I mean, I was in like tears. It was just so, it was so meaningful, and it meant so much. So it really became kind of the way that I went through chemo. It was just like, I can do this, you know. I believe in magic, like this is going to work. And so the unicorn and the pictures really meant more than I even thought they would. And it was a nice, you know, it hung on my wall next to my bed throughout the chemo. It just became this, I would look up at it and just remember that, you know, there was something that I was fighting for. So I'm glad we did those pictures that day too. So that was my day in history a year ago. And today, a year later, I was on a call volunteering to help other people go through metastatic breast cancer. Hopefully, I'll be able to do something to make a difference. I don't know what it is yet, but hopefully, it'll be something. And that's why I'm a little late to my video. But yeah, now things start to get a little faster because for some reason, everything was a rush at this time. I'm not really sure why, but everything was a big, huge rush. Not that my tumor was growing any faster, but everything was just a big, huge rush right now. But thanks for listening, and I'll be back tomorrow because there was something else tomorrow too. Yeah. So hope everybody's having a great day, and thanks for listening. Bye.